Waste of all description is on the move. Increasing amounts, especially of waste paper, plastic scrap and metals, are being shipped from developed countries to countries with fast-growing economies.
We are an international orientated plastic collection company. We are mainly collecting in Europe and we are exporting our plastics to Far East, mainly China, India, Pakistan.
We are now at the largest stainless steel plant of the world. We collect all stainless steel waste for all over the world. We collect it, we mix it up that the quality is correct for our customers, and then we ship them to the big melters in, by example, Finland and India and China.
We are exporting to Asia because of the big demand and growing demand over there for plastic scraps.
At the global level, the international trade of hazardous and other waste, waste that is potentially dangerous for people or the environment, is regulated by the UN's Basel Convention.
The Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movement of hazardous waste and their disposal is an international convention put together in 1989 as a response of the international community to the spate of dumping of hazardous waste from developed countries in developing countries.
There's one overall global objective, which is to protect human health and the environment from the dangers of hazardous and other wastes, and all this with the overall goal of promoting sustainable development. And to achieve this overall goal, there are, let's say, two pillars. The first pillar is to ensure the environmentally sound management of wastes, and the other one is to put in place a procedure for the informed consent in case of transboundary movements of these wastes. And the second pillar, as I said, which is about transboundary movements, has been translated through a PIC procedure, prior informed consent procedure, where the exporting party is supposed to ask the potentially importing country to consent to receiving the waste in question. What's important to note is that the Basel Convention applies to so-called hazardous and other wastes. The hazardous wastes are listed in the convention. The other wastes are actually household waste. And these wastes are either corrosive or explosive or inflammable or poisonous and have these hazardousness characteristics and fall under the convention. But a party may decide to expand the scope of the convention. It can decide under its national legislation that other types of waste are considered hazardous. Or it can also decide that the import of specific waste streams is prohibited, and then a party can actually go beyond the scope of Basel Convention and put in place a ban, an export ban or an import ban, and this is what parties have the liberty to do.
In February 1998, the Conference of the Parties decided to add two lists of wastes as two new annexes to the Convention, namely List A and List B. Waste contained on List A is characterized as hazardous. Waste contained on List B will not be characterized as hazardous unless it contains contamination which makes it hazardous. Also, the European Union implemented the Basel Convention. The transboundary shipment of any kind of waste to, from, and within the EU is regulated by the Waste Shipment Regulation. This regulation contains two groups of waste, listed on the so-called Amber List and the Green List.
We have two different kinds of waste for this regulation. It is the Green List and the Orange List. The most of the type of our waste is coming with the Green List, so we have the Annex 7 with all this transport, and sometimes we have the some waste which will be called on the Orange List, and so we have then the documents in the license from the authorities. You see all in the last 2 years, all the notifications about the Orange List.
For the majority of the plastics we export, we use the green list procedure, mainly for exports to China. For the exports to, for example, India, we use the red list procedure.
What is sometimes called the red or orange list procedure is in fact the procedure for waste listed on the amber list. It is the procedure for prior written notification and consent. The green list procedure is applicable to shipments of waste intended for recovery and mentioned on the green list to countries that intend to accept this waste without prior consent. Waste metals, paper, plastics and other waste materials from developed countries are feeding the booming Asian economy, which cannot be met by virgin material. In Asian countries, there are more and more state-of-the-art recycling sites, but not all waste ends up there.
We carry out inspections to prevent waste being exported illegally to other countries in the world, countries that are a lot poorer than our own countries in Europe and in the Western world. We've got documentary evidence, there's been a lot of films showing all the illegal waste that's being exported and being dealt with in a very, very poor environmental way.
And now here we've got a rubbish tip.
Yeah, this is one of the places where they said that foreign waste has been dumped.
It might not look much, but Nitty assures me that what we can see are just clues that something much worse has happened at this farm. It's pretty obvious where this stuff has come from.
England.
Mothercare, that's the UK chain.
Yeah, that's Mothercare.
Plastic bags can be dangerous, it says.
Any doubt this is from England?
But how exactly did it end up here?
Nearby there's a paper company that's supposed to be importing paper waste and recycling it, and this company gets this waste, takes a little bit of paper from it, and the rest of it is pure trash. Pure, unrecyclable, unusable trash that's just dumped like in places like this.
At $80 a tonne, the company pay less than half the price for this material than they would pay for fully sorted paper. What they can't use, they dump. Local activists have so far discovered a further 10 dumps within a mile or so of this one, all filled with British and American waste.
In 2002, the Basel Action Network, BAN, and the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition published the shocking results of an investigation concerning the export of waste to Asia. Exporting harm, the high-tech trashing of Asia. The investigation team found men, women and children toiling under primitive conditions, involved in operations like the burning of plastics and wires, riverbank acid works to extract gold, melting and burning toxic soldered circuit boards, and the cracking and dumping of toxic lead-laden cathode ray tubes. Already the pollution in this town has become so devastating that well water is no longer drinkable, and thus water has to be trucked in from 30 kilometers away for the entire population. In Africa, there is a huge demand for second-hand products like TV sets, fridges and computers. These products are mainly shipped from Europe and the United States.
In die arme landen, mensen zijn ze gewoon blij als ze van een goede koelkast die kan koud zijn. En lekker koud water bij of een iets anders. Dus deze voor mij, deze hand is kapot. Maar die koelkast is goed. Dus kan ze dat niet in de Westen verkopen. Ik kan dat gebruiken. Ik kan daar mensen blij maken. Dit is ook een CVK-vrij, R600A. Dit is een CVK-vrij, R600A. Deze zijn ze allemaal R600A.
In general, the export of a perfectly working fridge with an ozone-friendly coolant is acceptable. But the export of waste from electric and electronic equipment without prior consent is prohibited. Why is this?
Because people in developing countries, like I mentioned, lack the technology, lack the resources to manage the electronic waste. They are aware that there are some valuable components in electronic waste. For example, copper wire. And also without protecting themselves, no personal protective equipment, they use bare hands, expose themselves, so they are burning electronic waste openly.
Cables and wires are burned to remove the plastic insulation. Also, the plastic casings are burnt to reduce the volume.
When you burn electronic waste, all the hazardous substances that were logged in the computer and the phone gets released into the environment. So the burning causes release of dioxins, heavy metals, other toxic chemicals that can have serious adverse health consequences on humans. They also pollute the air, water, and soil.
The only way that we can stop that is to conduct inspections and prevent illegal exports from actually happening in the first place.
The way to prevent illicit transnational waste shipment depends on the situation in both the exporting country and the receiving country. Every country has its own difficulties, such as too few staff, many seaports, long borders, lack of equipment, and lack of information. But every country has also its own possibilities and opportunities, its own tools. Examples are cooperation with police and customs, the possibility to combine tasks in order to work more efficiently, in-depth knowledge of the waste chains, especially the chains which end up in non-OECD countries.
A crucial element to ensuring the enforcement of the Basel Convention is to make sure that all the various stakeholders work together and share information. And you have on one side the port authorities, you have the customs officers, you have the police officers, you have the environmental authorities, and all these stakeholders need to work together with the same objective and to share information. And I think this increased cooperation is key to ensuring that the objectives of the convention are fulfilled.
You can only clap with two hands.